Alright folks, welcome to this exciting video where you once again join me in the wild landscape of Scotland. And for today's adventure, I've come into the wild landscapes of Angus to document the history of a little abandoned castle here. At one time it was a great, typical 15th century like stone castle here in the lands of Scotland. And back in 1539 it was actually razed to the ground. I think it was pretty much destroyed in an attack, but I'll read the history once I get a little bit closer here to the structure. I was here one time before, but I didn't know the exact history, so I've always wanted to come back and like update the viewers and tell you all about a place like this and actually what happened to it and how grand it must have at one time been. And it's actually hidden within this little forest area. Often in my video titles it says abandoned castle, like hidden in wild forest or whatever, and it genuinely is true. There's often little wild bits of land between fields and other areas of the countryside, and literally within those areas there's incredible history just hidden and forgotten. At one time this would have been the front line of one of the biggest wars that was going on in the world at that time, and it's crazy just to imagine that. It's almost horrific history here in the lands when these castles were getting burnt down and like smashed up, and the people inside, imagine the terror, defending and holding out for as long as they could, and then after a certain moment it's breached. Look at the ice here, check that out folks, that shows the cold conditions that we're dealing with here on this adventure. There has been a lot of wet weather, but I think we're away to get a real cold snap now here in the land, and you can see that with the frost. But yeah, this is so cool. I love wee adventures like this when there's like crazy stonework that's just like a scar or skeleton of history from that ancient time. Yes folks, check it out, we've made it to this ancient historical wonder, and this is the history here. It says it was a medieval castle called Balgavies Castle. It was razed to the foundation by James VI during his journey to the north after the defeat of Argyll in 1593. The castle had been surrounded by a moat, but all that remains today is what we're about to go and look at in this video folks. And it's just a little bit of the original stonework basically that was in that area. So let's go and have a look folks. It's incredible to imagine we would have been at the side of this castle and it would have been standing grand, taller than these trees, and also around this area there must have been a moat. We're talking so many hundreds of years ago that even this surrounding wall wouldn't have been here, but in its own right it's also an ancient wall, so that gives an idea of the incredible history. And it's amazing to think James VI, after defeating Argyll, he had just made a journey north, destroying and pillaging the lands, taking over these lands to give to the rich royalists of the era, along with parcels of land and great houses and mansions of the time, castles and buildings. It was all taken from the original people and given away. And it is just incredible to think of that. The noise at one time here, the ferociousness, the shouting, roaring, and who knows what other sounds of fires crackling and the destruction of the building as it crumbled. Whereas now today, it's just peaceful silence. Frozen dew on the grass here in the early morning air. And just check this out folks, wow, I always forget how cool these places are. And just imagine, this is similar to what we've seen in recent videos at places like Vane Castle and stuff. Often down at the low levels of the castle, it's built with these stone arches, and a lot of the time they're down lower under the ground even. But the ground here has changed so much since the original castle's position. It's interesting just to imagine it. When we were here at that time, the moat would have been surrounding us, and it is incredible how much must have been filled in over the years. And Yeah, it's just so special, folks. Look at the detail here with a little window at the back. And just think how long ago, literally, these stones were put into position. It's almost just mind-boggling to think how long ago that history took place. To think what important characters in Scottish and British history stood within these walls, maybe having a conversation about the successful siege that they had just carried out, basically. Or maybe earlier sieges that were unsuccessful, that's unspoken about in the history books. These castles were probably defended strongly and had a lot of successful years from their original constructors and builders. And look at this here, the way the sandstone's shaped. Think about the man that chiselled those lines there onto the stone, what they were wearing, what they were thinking about. And basically back at a time like that, the worries of the world were a completely different thing. Look at this, here's an ancient bottle. Probably not as ancient as the castle for sure, but look. Oh, it's not actually super old, but look at the glass. It's not equally as thick all the way around. It is an old bottle, but it's not as old as the castle, basically. I'll lay it back where it was. It's interesting seeing little things like that. Think about what's gone on the hundreds of years since this place was probably like abandoned or whatever. Again, other things may have been done in here since then, like it's maybe even been used as like a little bit of a shed or a stable for some local farmer, or sometimes nowadays the current landowners are still the same bloodlines and families as the families that were the rich royalists of that era when the English took over the lands. Look at this here. It's almost like these walls have been built at a later time in front. Because see, the main castle structures in areas like this, it's fully gone now. But often they would be made with walls which were often almost 10 foot thick in places. But a lot of stone from the main castle was most likely used here to build nearby big houses and farms. Because that's what often happened. The old abandoned castles became quarries. Because for the longest time, the history didn't actually mean anything to a lot of people. Yeah, this whole mound here, you have to imagine if there was no grass and greenery. Think about the rubble and history which may be here. Look at this, it's like a little underground, which could have been like a little safe room of its era. I have put a few YouTube short videos on recently of like this place, just little clips from the last time I was here, but I didn't know the full history the last time, and that's how I always wanted to come back. And I was thinking, because it's frosty and real wintry, the ground's quite easy to navigate. Everything's not covered up by bushes and greenery. Yeah, it's amazing to think under my feet here, it's like hollow. And I wonder what other little areas here may be covered up. Maybe this whole mound here is just the rubble from the castle, which is mad to think about. And I wonder how far out here the original moat used to go round. Yeah, this is special, folks. We'll go down and take a look inside under here. I was just wanting to document this back wall. A lot of this rubble and stones here must have fallen from this back section. Yeah, this is ace to see this. A lot of old castles as well had a well for the water within the castle grounds, so if they were under siege they could still get like fresh water and stuff. So sometimes maybe even a little underground building like that may have been a well, a little well shed. Yeah, I'm looking at the way this is constructed and you can see it's got the window lintel stone, but the load bearing section of the structure is this here. It's like an arch of stone, like a bridge with a keystone in the middle. And the ancient castle constructions around Scotland all used that type of like window design. That's how I've seen like the same thing at all these castles, and you start to learn the architecture of the eras and you can kind of see the way they did things back then. It's a similar design with these big arches underneath the main castle, giving it so much strength on its foundations. Most likely built right down onto bedrock. Wow, look at the forest scene at this side, folks. These walls were put in at a later time, most likely when agriculture and stuff was the prime income from the lands here, which it still is to this day. Little areas like this are just left at the side of these fields. Credit to the landowner for leaving this here to tell the little story of history so we can remember these ancient lands and what went on in them. Yeah, I don't know if this is just some sort of like mossy, licheny stuff in there, but it almost looks like it's painted, but I think it is just a natural colour that's appeared. Yeah, look, the wall's just like falling away, and that's the reason like these videos keep the history alive. I say it quite a lot on the videos, but it is true. Every year things like this just fall down and degrade more and more. The story's almost gone, folks. Look, this back wall here has been pretty thick. It is interesting. It's like this could have even been a little building maybe at the side of the castle, but who knows the original ground height around here. After all those hundreds of years, can so much vegetation grows up through. So let's take a look down here, folks. This was either their little safe or like some sort of well. This could have potentially been the fresh water source, but you can see how these stones have moved and shifted, and at one time there must have been a little stair leading down this area to the underground section down here. Whoa, it's so slippy. Literally today, folks, it's like 0 degrees. Probably 1 degree down here in this forest area. But look at this, here's where the door has been for this little underground world. No way, I can see this has been like a fox's den or something like that. I'm hoping there's no beast in here. Oi! There could be a fox just sitting around this corner here ready to pounce. Like, that's why I'm always wary going into some of these places. Look at this. That hole there looks like it's been for maybe a door bolt or something going into originally. Wow, here we are, folks. Underground Scotland right here. And this is just such a cool little room. Like, I'm trying to figure out just what exactly it's been. Obviously the amount of backfill, the amount of years a place like this has been, I think it could be the little well shed, to be honest. The freshwater well. And look, there's been like a wee vent window up there. And that's similar to what we saw at Balgavies Castle when we were in the well shed of it. At that time we didn't realise that's what it was either. Sometimes these holes, these wells can go down like 100 foot or even more. It's incredible to think what is under my feet right now. It could even be super dangerous with like stone slabs, and if they gave way with the weight of rubble, it would just fall right in. And look at this angle looking out this door, folks. I just love it. Such a crazy scene of history right here again on the channel. And just think, yeah, it's weird how that door is. It's like you can actually see the steps here. Let's have a look. Let's pull out some of this wet leaves. Yeah, look at this, folks. There's the original steps. Just think 1500s. Folk nipping up and down there. And maybe when the final siege was just about over, this is the sort of place they would have come down to. And yeah, it's just mad to think like what literally went on in these places, folks. It was the front line of the war back at that time. It's just an absolute madness. I'm looking at these stones and it's actually like mossy kind of stuff. It almost makes it look like cement in there. Right, folks, I just got a couple of photographs there at this little entrance bit because it looks so cool. I'm going to keep this adventure moving because, like I say, it's freezing cold and we're doing this short video to share that history of the exact details. 1593, those ancient times and those battles. I'm not sure what they had back then in the way of like cannons or like artillery for that era. I think it was the early stages. I think they would have used a lot of fire, maybe burning a certain type of oil or whatever, pig fat often, under some of the foundations of the walls. That was the kind of thing they did back at that time to weaken the structure, and then once it got to a certain stage it would just crumble down and fall and the wall would be breached. But here's an interesting detail, folks. I actually noticed this. I was taking a couple of photographs, and there's actually a wall here that I never noticed the first time I came to this location. Look at this. See, look, here's the built wall hidden within the grass. So that makes you think the castle here, the main castle, maybe wasn't actually above this. But then it could have been. Who would even know? Sometimes I'm trying to picture the castle in my head and like compare it to other castles I've explored, and then that gives you an idea of where some of the historical wonders may be located. But yeah, that could have just been another internal wall that I'm seeing. It is just incredible that so much has gone from a spot like this. These few walls tell that story. James VI coming up here, after his success, he would have been feeling like an absolute winner. Nothing would have stood in his way, and his army would have been the strongest ever that it had been. And then they just made a point of just going up the land, travelling north. And today, yeah, it's like a peaceful little corner of Angus. Back in the olden times, in the olden maps, this is actually called Forfarshire, this area. Nowadays, Angus, on the east of Scotland here, and there was over 100 castles in Angus itself. So that gives you an idea of how many castles was actually around back in those like days. Some of them nowadays, there's just no even any remains at all though. Sometimes just a mound in the land. Look, here's another detail, folks. I never noticed this the last time either. This here is actually a historical building here, look, because here's remains of another wall. See, this is the kind of history I love. Last time I came, it was too overgrown to see stuff like this. So that shows we're seeing more of the castle footprint. I believe this is a wall here in its original position. Yeah, wow, look at this. Oh, see, look, here's a square. Look at this detail, folks. See, the thing is, the well might not be in that wee shed that we saw back inside the building. It might be anywhere in a place like this. Because when I was at like the abandoned castle up on the Isle of Islay, we literally saw a castle and the well was like this. It was a square well in the ground. But yeah, it's just such a variation off from me the places I go. When I come to a place like this, it's like travelling back in time. So much has changed since these times. I think I'll take a wee walk over this side just to make sure there's no obvious like historical details that I'm missing here, folks. See, there is like interesting kind of mounds in the land here. It's got almost like a circular kind of area. And I'm not sure if there was other little buildings like related to the castle back at that time. Maybe little agricultural or farm buildings out with the perimeter there of the main castle structure, but maybe inside the line of the moat. See what I'm thinking here, folks? Would this burn at the bottom of the hill potentially be the original moat? Look, this almost looks like there's actually a track, maybe a gamekeeper's track into the modern days here in the lands. I would doubt very much that would have been an original castle road there. Yeah, I'm not sure if this would be what the moat would have looked like. We'll go and have a look. Yeah, this is a real interesting burn here, folks. Look at that. It's completely into the sheer bedrock face there, and it's proper bedrock there. We not a lot of earth, but look at the character of this old little bridge here. I'm being wary. This could be washed out below where I'm standing. Look at that little bridge there. Proper constructed with the little stones and stuff, similar to the castle. This here could have been the original castle approach. Look at that bridge. Wow. See, this is the kind of thing in the land, folks. I love analysing the history and trying to figure stuff like that out. And that could be the original little bridge, but then maybe it had like a drawbridge. This little bridge might have been built at the same time these dry stone dikes were put into position. That could be more to do with the estate or agricultural history after, because most likely with a moat it would have had like a drawbridge or whatever to get across rather than a permanent bridge. Because if you just had a bridge over your moat, it would be pointless having the moat in a lot of senses. but it just shows eventually the moat wasn't actually enough to defend the castle, along with all the other defences they probably had, longbows, crossbows. I'm not sure what year like muskets and stuff may have come into the scene. Yeah, I'm just making my way back around this wild bit of land, folks, just keeping my eyes peeled for more wall lines or boundary lines. What a special place it's been, folks. Like I say, it's so peaceful in these lands now. It's mad to imagine the comparison to the original invasion of this area and the destruction of the castle. An interesting thing to think about as well, the old croft that we visited in the last adventure up at the top of Glendall, it was most likely thriving at the same time this castle was thriving, and they both probably met their demise around the same time. And the little 1900s kind of cottage that we saw in the last video, it would have been maintained by the nobleman who got the land after these old times of the original croft builders, or it's the same with like the castle builders. They didn't actually have to go and build themselves a castle, but then I suppose sometimes when the noblemen were given the castles, they were in absolutely mint condition and good order, ready to move in. Other ones were probably like this, totally destroyed. They would have had to build themselves a new like house of sorts when they got the land. Look at this, I'm just noticing where I saw the wall earlier, it's kind of an obvious square in the ground, and it's like the wall must have come right along here. Yeah, so the original footprint of the castle may have potentially come along from this side all the way to here, right the way around this section. It must have been massive and grand, but I've never actually seen, obviously there's no like illustrations or there's no exact documentation of how this castle looked, I don't believe, that I've ever seen anyway. Anyway, I need to negotiate back down off this mossy plinth of land here. Check it out, folks. A castle like that wouldn't be complete without having to scramble over some mossy land to get to it. And I've just worn the trainers for this because I was thinking with the frost it wouldn't actually be that wet and spongy underfoot, and it's like I've been okay so far, I would say. My feet still seem dry even though it's just so bitterly cold. The landscape looking away over there, it's like snowy peaked mountains in the distance, and that is just what's all around just now, folks. That's often what makes the air colder on the lower lands here. So the way it's spelled, you would almost think this castle was called Balgavies Castle, but I believe in the local tongue it's actually pronounced Bulges. And it's been cool in this video to share that history of James VI, after beating Argyll, travelling up north and destroying castles like this one that we've seen, and we can see what's left after that mad destruction, and it's almost like going to a movie scene, travelling back in time and imagining the soldiers and armies which walked in these lands, the mad politicians of the era who themselves often were warriors out in these battles on the front line. Anyway, I'm going to end this one here, folks. It's been a special little adventure. Balgavies Castle, hidden in the wild lands of Angus, Scotland here. I'll end this one here, folks. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back soon with the next one, wherever I end up going.